Hello. This is our third lecture for the Java array in the series of lectures regarding Java object-oriented programming and data structures. So in our last two lectures, we discussed how to create an array, how to index array, how to do some operations on the elements of the array, and how to write a method with array as parameters. And just a very important concept I'm going to reinforce again. When array as parameters, also in Java, there is no pass by reference, there's only pass by value for all of the parameters with Java method. But there is a difference between the parameter as a primitive type or as an object type. And the Java array is object type. So what it does pass in is the copy of the reference, okay, which point to the heap memory. So you do be able to make modification on the array, and the array can be modified after you call the method. Okay. And there's another new concept here regarding Java array is for the loop, okay, for the iterations. And previously, what we learned is we use index. Array index, okay, for the loop. So basically as a loop variables value, okay. And there is another important feature for the loop is we call it for each loop. For each loop, okay. And there is a difference between these two loop. If you loop use array index, you can do, cannot write over there for some reason. So you can do two things. You can do access. You can also do modification. You can also modify, okay. But for each loop, you can only access. Okay, so the syntax is you have the regular for, okay, the keyword, and you don't have index here. So you specify the type, okay, and this is the element. So basically, it's kind of like a loop variable, okay, the name, okay. What it serves is, so this is the data type for the array type, okay, for array data type. And this means each individual element. So you are doing element by element, okay. Then you have this colon, okay, and here is the name of the array. And then you can do something, okay, on the element, okay. But generally speaking, for each loop is only for access, okay. When you try to do modification, you use a regular for loop. But this is a convenient when you write it, and it's used quite a lot, okay, for each loop. And so in this lecture, we are also going to discuss process string with array, okay? And the first kind of concept is we can work with string the same iterative way as we do with array, okay? Because string basically it's a group of characters, a group of charts, okay? Characters. So basically, it's kind of a group of, it's kind of like an array. Yeah, array, okay. And for string length, there is a specific function for string class. It's called data length. This is different from array data length. That's not a function, okay? It's just a feature. Okay? And to access each individual character in the string, you can do char at. Okay, so that's a function, and then you specify in that. So basically, this is kind of like the arrays indexing operator. Okay, and for string, you can also split a string into words and you call the split function, and then you specify the delimiter to split. And we will see that in our examples. And further on, later in this chapter, because of the previous discussion, and the example is regarding one-dimensional array. So it's kind of a linear, okay? Linear array, okay, one-dimensional. So you can view it kind of like, a linear block, is it? And you have a linear, a number of slots arranged in a linear way, okay? And each one store an element starting with sub-0, okay? And ending at sub-length -1. Okay, and then how about like tabular data? Is it, how do we store it? Okay, then we can use a concept, we call it a 2D array. Okay, so the syntax for 2D array is then you need to have two empty square brackets when you declare it to indicate that it's a two-dimensional array. Okay, then same time, when you create, you need to do new and specify the data type. So the first index is for row length, so how many number of rows. And the second one is column for the tabular data, okay? So how many columns? So array not just limited to 1D or 2D, you can also have 3D, 4D, okay? Multi-dimensional array is supported, okay? And there's another concept called jagged 2D array, okay? Jagged 2D array is the column, okay? So the length of column may be different. It's not the same for each row, okay? So each row can have different number of columns. So same thing, when you declare it, you need to have two blank brackets, okay? The row length you do need to specify, but the column length, you leave it empty. So to access an element of the 2D array, then you need to specify both the row index and column index, okay? And for jagged 2D array, because the column length for each row is different, okay? So then for each individual row, then you use the length, because anyway, for each individual row, then it's a 1D array. 1D array for the column, is it? So then you can use the data length to know how many columns you're going to have for each individual row. Okay, then next, let's take a look at the examples. So we first start with our textbook, the third example, Java array X3, okay? In this example, what we are going to show is, because in the previous, the example two, we do show path array as a parameter, okay, but we didn't do any modification on the array, okay, and here we do show how to do path by value, but we are going to show path by value works for array, and we are also going to see modification of array, okay, with the method call. Okay, so here let's take a look. So we have an array called weekly hours. So it's a one-dimensional array integer with 7 elements. And then we have a method called input array. So we pass in this weekly array. And if you recall, this weekly hours array, sub 0, sub 1, initially it's all 0. The default value are all 0, is it? So weekly hours cannot be 0, is it, if you work. So you do need to fill the array with exact. So the way we do it, we create a method. So let's take a look how it works. So this is our class method input array. So the parameter is an integer type. Okay. So what we get the input is we get it from standard input. And this standard input is basically from keyboard. So you can type in a keyboard, okay? And here we use the scanner class, okay, to get it, okay? So because we have 7 elements for the array, is it? So we loop from the first one all the way to the 7th one, okay? So less and equal than 6, be careful. And how do you get it? With the scanner. So this is our variable to take the input, is you call, because it's integer, so there's a related method to get the number, okay? So it's next integer, okay? So that next integer, then it will get read the next integer number. Then you assign it to each individual element of the array, is it? So that's about this function. So we do see, is it, after we call it, we pass in. What we pass in is that hourly array. Is that I don't remember exactly the name, but anyway, it's hourly pay or something. Okay. So that's an array that we created in main. And it's all with zeros, a bunch of zeros, okay? 0 values. So that's the default. So basically on heap, because if you recall, so here is that heap. So you do have 7 blocks, each is individual 4 bytes, okay? And so that's a heap. So we have that hourly going to point here. Is it here? This ARR also going to point here. Initially, you mean the all field with 0. Is it now you have this scalar integer v, okay? And and then you do the import input, okay? So to get next integer, is it? So whatever value, suppose you enter 8. For the first day, okay, then second day you enter 9, and the third day you enter 7, and the last day, suppose you enter is 10, something like that, is it? So then you can see all of the value that you enter will be stored on the heap memory, is it? So you see the array that we created in main, the value did get changed. So it did get modified. Okay, so even though it's passed by value, okay, in Java we call it pass by value, but you can see the array value does got modified. So that's the this one. And so it does show, okay, so we then oh, for the next method is called compute pay. Okay, so the array is weekly hours. Okay. And so the weekly hours, before you call, it's all zero, all zero. Is it after you call, change to values entered. Okay, so that's for this method. Let's take a look the method compute pay. Okay. So the compute pay method is we have the rate, pay rate, okay, and here is weekly hours. Hours array going to pass in, okay? And then we are going to calculate the total pay based on the rate. So because if it's over 8 hours, we are going to have over rate count. Otherwise, you just have the rate, okay? So for this function, the weekly hours is not going to be changed, so not modified. Well, so we just retrieve the value from the array. Well, then let's go back to take a look the this part. Okay, so same thing. We still use the scanner to standard input to get the hourly pay rate. Okay, to store it here, and then you and we also provide the pay rate. Okay. For this one, what we want to have is a floating number, is it? So we call next double, okay? And then you can find the pay, okay? And so we already learned how to write a method with parameter is array. And also in this example, we also learned the method can modify the array. So then you can work on the three three knowledge exchange based on this example. And one last method that we are going to discuss here is this method. It's called compute daily pay, okay, for this method. So same thing, the two parameter we pass in, one is the hourly, the weekly hour, weekly hours array, the other is the rate. Okay, so this is primitive, this is array, okay. And what's a new thing for this function is a return type. So return type is array. And if we want to return an array, what you can do is you need to give the data type and with following with blank square brackets, okay? So what here we are going to do is we first find the length of the parameter array, okay? Then we create an array called the daily pay, okay? So this array will be created on heap because it has new, so it's dynamic memory allocation, okay? Then for each one, okay, for each day, what the pay will be, then you follow the formula to calculate and you assign it, is it? And after that, you can return this array. Okay, so this array will not be disappear because it will be returned. Okay, so that's a second method that kind of you can use a method to fill value with array and then also return it. So option one, we already learned, is it? So pass array as parameter. And you can fill array with specified value, is it? So here is option two. You can return array, is it? With field value. So you can modify or you can fill value regarding regarding the array, okay? And then let's take a look how do we invoke this method, compute daily pay, okay? Compute daily pay. Compute daily pay method. Compute overtime pay. Compute daily pay. Yeah, so you can so it's a double. Okay, so we we kind of missed the this method call. Okay, so you can try to do that after. So you can kind of you still needed to declare a variable. Okay, it's a double. Um, and you do like the daily pay. Daily pay of the week. Okay. And then you can just call that function, compute daily pay. And you pass in that weekly hours array and the pay rate. Okay. And then you will get the daily pay of the week stored in this new array, okay? And then you can do some further operations on this array. Okay, so that's regarding the third example. And next, let's take a look at the fourth example, okay? So in this example, it's regarding how to work with string as array of characters. So in our textbook, it's Java array X4. Okay, so let's take a look. So here we have string. So uh, so string is object. Okay, it's not a primitive type. Mm, Notation. So this sentence is object type. So this is a string, okay? And uh, for string length, the number you can call this length function, okay? And here we create a character array, okay? So array D, so the type is char, okay? Then you can do new char, okay? And then to get each individual character, so like HELLO, okay, and the space, okay, each individual one, then you can loop through because once you have the length, you can loop through, okay, and then you call the char at to get each individual one, okay. So here, the first function we deal with this character array is called a reverse array. So let's just take a look what that is. Reverse array. Okay. So here is that reverse array method. So what it return an array? Yeah. So this is second time that we saw the function return type is an array. Okay. So we pass in that original char array. Okay. Uh, it's a pretty straightforward approach. Okay, so you first, of course, you need to know how many letters in the array. Okay, and then this is the reversed array. Okay, so you do need to allocate memory on heap. Okay, so you call new for this array whenever you want to create an array. And you just assign from the last to the first of the original array, the second last of the second, the original array. They do the reverse way, and then you can return the array, okay? So pretty straightforward for this method. And so in our example, so you can just output the reward and we can double check. And then the second method, The second point here we wanted to introduce is for a string. If you want to get each individual word out. So let's take a look. For this original string, it's called sentence, is it? And it has three space separate the four words, is it? And you wanted to take each word out, and we call it this. We normally call it tokenization. Okay, to do that, you can call strings split function. Then you specify the delimiter. So here the delimiter. Delimiter is space. Okay, so it will take a hello word hello out. Okay, and it will be, so basically you can guess this split function in string, the return type, this function return type is array. Is it? Because over here you can see, yeah, you declare an array, is it? And the array will take whatever it returned. Okay, and then we call another function. We say, okay, we want to cap every other word. So you want to cap H, and you also want to cap W. Okay, so, and once again, over here, we try to output to see if of the specified word capitalized. Is it? So over here, we are not going to modify, so we use a for each loop. Okay, so you specify this S is going to access each individual word from this array. Okay, each individual word. So basically, it's also a string because the array type, this type, is not a primitive, it's a class. Okay, it's an object, it's called a string type. Okay, so this kind of like it will access each individual one, okay, repetitively. Okay, and this is used for each loop to then to see if you did capitalize it. So the remaining, okay, and we have another method. So for this method, it's find the first occurrence. Okay, so what this function does, it finds an occurrence of a specified string in the array of the string. Okay, so the first parameter of this function is an array of string. The second parameter is a string. Okay, so to do this, you can just call. So because array has a method called equals, and this method can check if the two string have the same contents. Be careful, okay, here we use equals. We didn't use this. Okay, we didn't use this. And later on, when we discuss class, we have a better understanding why we use this equals method instead of this equal equal. Okay, because for object equal equal is compare the reference, the location memory, heap memory location. For only for primitive type, it's compare the contents, the value. Okay, so that's why over here we use equal. Equal is compare the contents, and here we want to compare the contents. Okay, we understand this example, and for the remaining part, and for this example, you can work on the three knowledge check, okay, to help you better understand this example. And then last in this chapter, let's take a look how to play around with two-dimensional array because all the previous discussion about 1D array, okay, a linear. So for two-dimensional array, as previously in our slides, we point out, then you need to have two square brackets, okay. And when you do, you also need to spare row length and column length. So this is tabular data for you to store, okay? So it's so this is so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 rows. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you have 5 columns. Okay, so and in this oh, this is 2, 3. Okay, and you can have row and column be declared, is it? And when you loop through a two-dimensional array, then you need to have outer loop and the inner loop, okay? Uh, so for outer loop is for row. Okay, first row, second row, third row, is it? And inner loop is for each row, and then you loop through the column. Okay, so you inner loop. Then when you get a specific row, then you loop through the individual column. Okay, and then you access each individual element specify through index, the row index and column index, okay? And here we do the value assignment, okay? And we create a function called average. So let's take a look what the function looks like. Okay, so here is a function. The return type is a double. It's passed in two-dimensional array, 2D array. So you do need to provide two blank brackets. Okay, and then you use the inner loop and outer loop. Okay, use two level of loop. Okay, and to do the summation, and then to find the average, you find the total number of items and do the accumulation, and then do the divide by the number of I, you find the average, okay? So that's it's quite straightforward for this one. And then next, let's move on to see what we did, okay? Okay, so next, let's see. So here we also want to get each column, the summation of each row, okay? Sum of each row, basically, okay? So what, because this is a tabular, this array is not jagged, okay? So the column numbers are the same for each row. So you just needed to know, okay, how many columns for each row, okay? Then we create a one-dimensional array. So we are going to do the calculation do the summation basically, okay, for so you call this function. So the sum of column, then it's a one pass in with one-dimensional array, okay? Pass in with each individual column, okay? And then you can output the calculation result. And then next, let's move on to see what do we have for the next function. So this next function is to find the number of occurrence, okay, within the two-dimensional string array, okay? So you pass in the parameters two-dimensional array, and that's the word you try to find. So then you do need to use the outer loop and inner loop. That for the outer loop, and both loop over here we use for each loop. And be careful, okay, for the row. So this is row iteration. Therefore, row iteration, because each row will get a number of columns, so the type should be a one-dimensional array, okay? And then for each row, then you get each individual element, okay? So that's why the type is just a regular variable type, not an array, okay? So here we also use for each loop. But just be careful, okay, for the outer loop for row, it get a number of columns, so that's why the type should be a one-dimensional array, okay. Then you use the equals to check, so not use this equal comparison, okay. And then you can find do the count. Let's see. Okay, so so this is occurrence. What we call as you can call this method, is it? And that's all of the words. Okay, this word is a two-dimensional array, and you want to find the C. Okay, so for this word two-dimensional array, what over here we split is basically we here have a paragraph. Is it? It's a poem. Okay. So you have four lines. Okay, four sentences basically. Then in this case, you want to get each individual sentence out. Okay. So you can call the split and with carriage return. Okay, and enter. So the end of a sentence, okay, to split. So each individual line then will be a array of string, okay. So string, so an array, but the type is string, okay. And then to further get each individual word out, is it? Then you have the the words, is it? Because we still need to get each individual word out. And over here, the row number is, we already know, okay, but the column, because each sentence, the length is different, is it? The number of words is different. So basically, in this case, this words two-dimensional array, it's a jagged 2D array. Okay, so that's how we declare the jagged 2D array. Is that this jagged 2D array, then for each sentence, is that we further split it with the space. to split. Okay, then you can fill this jagged to the array. After that, then we can call this function, okay, count occurrence. Okay, so that's all of the information in the first chapter. Okay, it's about Java array. Okay, so for the next lecture, we are going to start discussing on chapter 2. So see you next time. Bye.